What's going on, guys? It's me, Zach, bringing you guys another fantasy football video. This one, I'm going to go over players I think are worth looking at on waivers ahead of Week 14. It's going to be the last week of the regular season, so we're really starting to look towards those playoffs. And hopefully, you guys are in. Maybe you need to win this week to get in. And either way, I think that there are plenty of good options this week that can really help you out, and guys that can maybe make a difference for you come playoffs as well. So it's been a really fun season. I've done pretty well. 4 of my 5 leagues, I've got a bye wrapped up, and in the fifth one, I needed to win and get a little bit of help to make the playoffs. So not so great in that one, but the other 4 have been great, and we'll see how that goes going forward. But it's been a lot of fun. I hope you guys are doing well yourself. As always, if you guys have any questions, do feel free to ask in the comments. I love interacting with you guys. If this is your first time on the channel, thank you so much for stopping by. Please do take a minute to like the video. If you get anything from it, you can subscribe to the channel. Try and put out as much content as I can. Normally about three videos a week, but it's been a little slower lately. I've been really busy. But as always, we'll be producing as much content as possible and really just here to help you guys win your fantasy championships. So yeah, with that, let's get into the quarterbacks. So starting us off with the quarterback position, I still feel like it's worth bringing up Deshaun Watson. He did look really bad in this last game, but that's not entirely shocking. It was his first game in 700 days. He did still seem really mobile, so I think he's going to offer some level of upside with his rushing ability. This is a team that's defense is actually not great, despite what they did last week. So they're going to have to score some points. There are enough weapons there, and we've seen what Deshaun Watson's done in the past with lesser players. So if you're not in need of a player you can start this week, I think Deshaun Watson's a guy that could really help you in the playoffs potentially, and he wouldn't be a guy that I want to start until I see it, but he's worth rostering if you're willing to overlook all the obvious extraneous stuff there. Jared Goff's another guy. You can start him pretty much whenever you need to. The Lions get a nice matchup with the Vikings this week, so he's a guy that you can spot start if you've got an injury with Lamar Jackson, Jimmy Garoppolo, maybe Tua's banged up. So it's worth taking a look at Jared Goff if you need a streamer this week. And then Mike White, same thing. He's looked honestly pretty good. They were competitive again this week against the Vikings. He was really good the week before against the Bears. They do have a tough matchup this week against the Bills, but the Bills have actually been pretty beatable through the air so far the last few weeks. So I think that you could maybe start Mike White. I wouldn't love to this week, but there's enough weapons there, and he looks decent enough that you could maybe use him in the playoffs if you need him. So he's worth taking a look if you're desperate. Moving on to the running back position here, my number one ad would be James Cook. He's been more and more involved in this Bills offense. He looks much better than Devin Singletary to me. And if he's going to get 15 to 20 touches a game, he's going to be an absolute monster. He's got a lot of receiving ability and a high octane offense. And honestly, no one's really stepped up outside of Stephon Diggs as a go-to feature option in this offense. I know we want to give Davis to that, but he hasn't done that reliably. So there's room for James Cook to make a mark on this offense, and he's a talented enough player that I think he's worth taking a look at for sure. Cam Akers is the guy you could look at. He got 17 carries for 60 something yards and 2 touchdowns this last week. It's surprising to see them using him like this, but he might just be their feature guy. I wouldn't want to trust it really. I want to see it another week because he's been really rough all year. In the Seahawks defense, we saw what they gave up to the Josh Jacobs the week before this. So I'm not totally sold on Cam Akers here, but he's worth a look. Donovan Knight, he had a really great week in lieu of Michael Carter this last week, and I think he's a guy that you could pick up and still going to be worth rostering. I know that Zonovan Knight will likely be losing snaps to Michael Carter when Michael Carter comes back. That might happen as early this week. And I don't know that I really want to start him against the Bills this week, but Zonovan Knight should be rostered. He seems to be a talented player on an offense that does sort of run through these running backs. So Zonovan Knight should be rostered for sure. Travis Homer is a guy you could look at. We saw Ken Walker leave the game with what they're calling a jammed ankle. And we also saw DJ Dallas leave the game with an ankle injury as well. So Travis Homer could basically have this backfield to himself come this weekend. Still a lot up in the air there, but it's possible that DJ Dallas and Ken Walker can both play as well. But this whole Seahawks backfield is going to be up. A lot of question marks going into this week. Travis Homer is a decent little player. He does a lot in the passing game for them as well. So Travis Homer would be a must start, honestly, if he is the only running back there. So he'd be worth rostering for sure. J.K. Dobbins, he could be playing here this as early as this week. I mean, I don't know that you're really going to want to trust him come the playoffs, but if you could pick him up, maybe see him perform for a week or two before you get to play him, he'd be worth rostering if you don't need anything right now. Jordan Mason, he's the clear number 2 option in San Francisco behind Christian McCaffrey. This is going to be an offense that runs through the running backs, especially with the injury to Jimmy Garoppolo here. So Mason's going to be a must-add. I mean, especially if you're a Christian McCaffrey owner, is that just a little insurance back? But Jordan Mason looks good too, so he'd be a guy that you could maybe start in a pinch if you need to, and he's gonna get a lot of work if anything does happen to McCaffrey, so he should be rostered. And then Alexander Madison, along with all these other handcuffs, are just gonna be guys that I throw in at the end here. Any of these guys are guys that could be league winners if something happens to a guy in front of them. So guys like Alexander Madison, Matt Breida, AJ Dillon, if he's for some reason not rostered, beside like Aaron Jones, go down a little bit here this week. So guys like that, guys that could really just step up into massive roles. We've seen with Samaje Perine done this last couple of weeks, and there's definitely other guys like that on your waiver wire that could just be waiting for an injury. So make sure you go look at all the handcuffs and just use your roster spots on them if you have them. Moving on to wide receiver, my number one ad here would be Jamison Williams if he's not already rostered. He finally played in his first game this last week. He wasn't very involved. That's not shocking. He's obviously going to be a player that's going to get worked in. So you'd want to wait until you see him perform before you really start him in your fantasy lineups. He's got a lot of talent. We've seen DJ Chark perform pretty admirably in his absence. And honestly, he's just a much better player than DJ Chark. So if DJ Chark can put up some fantasy relevant numbers, then Jamison Williams certainly can if he gets going. Treylon Burks, he had a really insane catch this last week. It was a 25-yard touchdown that he ended up leaving the game with a concussion on. It's one of the most impressive catches I've seen in the last couple weeks, and honestly, he's just a really talented player. He'd been stepping up as their number one for sure. He can go this week against I'm blanking on who they're playing, but the Jaguars. Yeah, if he can go against the Jaguars, it's a really great matchup for them. He's clearly a talented player, and this offense needs him. So Treylon Burks could be, I think, could really take over down this playoff stretch. And if he's healthy, I think you got to start him. The concussion wouldn't worry me going forward. Kadarius Toney, I know he's been inactive for the last few weeks, but nobody's really stepped up. We've struggled to see Sky Moore really cement himself here. I think Kadarius Toney is still going to have a role if he's healthy, and he'd be a guy that we saw what he did when he was given the opportunity. So Kadarius Toney can be rostered if you don't need to start this week. Gallup finally got going. He's looked healthier the last couple weeks. He had 2 touchdowns this last week, and he's just a good player. I know Odell Beckham could be coming there, and that would sort of hamper my expectations here, but Gallup's a good player. He could be a guy that you can start in your flex if you ever need him. Darius Slayton has just clearly established himself as the number one wide receiver for the Giants. He looks good. I've liked him for a while. He's a really nice deep threat. He's a guy that can certainly just take over a game over the top. And, I mean, he's just a guy that you can play as a dart throw in your flex if you need to, so he'd be a guy that's worth looking at. Donovan Peoples-Jones, he's been involved for the last several weeks. I think he's got like 7 straight games over 50 yards, which is just really impressive. He's been, honestly, really good. He's only had 1 touchdown, I believe, so far in the season. But this Browns offense could take a step forward if Sean Watson gets going as well, so Peoples-Jones should be owned. Nico Collins, he's got 4 straight games over 10 points. He had 9 targets this last week. This Texans team's out of the playoffs for sure, so it would make a lot of sense for them to feature Nico Collins as well. He's a good player, too. I think he should be rostered, absolutely. Van Jefferson, he's just the clear number 1 wide receiver in the Rams offense, if you want to call it an offense, but he is their best receiver left. They're going to have to score some points. He could be a guy that you want to roster. Then Isaiah McKenzie, he's the clear number 3 option in Buffalo. He's talented. He gets enough looks that you can start him in the flex if you ever need him as well. And finally, we've got the tight end position here. My number one ad here would be Greg Dulcich. He really looked good this last week with Courtland Sutton leaving, and he's just the clear number 2 option in this offense if one of these wide receivers is out. This offense is horrible. I'm not going to sugarcoat that, but the number 2 option on any team is pretty valuable if it's the tight end. So Dulcich should be rostered. Evan Ingram, he had a good week again this last week. He had like 4 for 38 and a touchdown, and he plays the Titans, who can be beat through the air this next week. So Evan Ingram would be a guy I want to look at. And then Hunter Henry, he'd probably be the guy I want to pick up if I need to start just this week. He's looked more involved with the last few weeks, and they play the Cardinals, who just can't defend the tight end position on Monday Night Football this next week. So Hunter Henry would be a guy that I want to add if I need to start this week. Thank you guys for watching. If you haven't already, please be sure to subscribe to the channel, like the video, check out these other videos here if you haven't. If you want more content, please feel free to follow me on Twitter at RealSteelFFB. I'll be more active on there as the season goes on. Thanks. Catch you later.